Hello everyone, and welcome to Game & Chat. This week, I am Kevin Chevalier, the best paranormal podcaster on YouTube, and also the best one in north central Minnesota. I'm only the best paranormal podcast YouTuber in north central Minnesota, not in general. Anyway, like I said, my name is Kevin Chevalier, and we're back with everyone's favorite series on my channel, Game & Chat. This time we're playing Freeways, which is, it really takes advantage of my minor in college. I ended up dropping out, but it was roadway design. What's the word that I'm looking for? It's not that. It's civil engineering. That was my minor that I failed during community college. But it's really, it's a fun puzzle game, but it's kind of easy for me. But I can see how it would be challenging for other people. But it's really comforting, which is what we need for today's topic, which is how the United States and allies funded the terrorist organization known as ISIS, or ISIL, the Islamic State in Syria, or the Levant, as it were. We have to go back first to the 1980s, when the Soviet Union, which was in a Cold War with us, invaded Afghanistan to further their goals in the region. And there was a protracted war, sort of like a hard wars over there, where it was, they technically won, but it was really not a good time and they didn't achieve much. But during that time, the United States government, the CIA, funded a freedom fighter who led an Islamist organization that resisted the Soviets, and newspapers at the time hailed him as a freedom fighter, a hero, and his name was Osama bin Laden. And then 20 years later, depending on which story you want to believe, he either was the leader of the organization that hijacked planes and lobbed them into the United States Federal World Trade Center, or the United States government used him as a cover-up to do it on their own. Either way, it's bad. Either we're stupid, the United States government is stupid and doesn't think these things out ahead of time, or they think them out ahead of time but don't care about casualties in the civilian populace, or they planned it from the beginning to be able to use them as a scapegoat. It's just bad all around, and that's provable. You can go and prove that. So that gets to the modern day, where we have ISIS, everything in Syria, all the tragedies in the Middle East, and this has been going on since before America's time, when the United Kingdom, Great Britain was the world power. They had all kinds of fun adventures in the Middle East. Believe you me, they caused a lot of them with stuff like the Balfour Agreement and the Pico-Sykes Agreement, all those sorts of setups that caused more problems in the long run than anything that they got out of it was worth. So, what this really goes down, you can go far back for all sorts of far-reaching things, but what it really gets down to is Russia has oil reserves, and they sell quite a lot of oil for energy to Europe, the European countries, especially the eastern parts of the European Union, the EU. And that's how they get a lot of their money. So Russia has a vested interest in continuing to sell oil to Europe. It is a big part. If they lose that, Russia is in a shaky situation where if they don't linchpin themselves in a way to continue to make money, they're going to have to lower. They have to do it now because they're not going to be able to maintain the Red Army, their army, for much longer. So they have to make moves now. That's why they're messing around in Ukraine. That's why they're making all these moves. And so, like I said, they have a vested interest in keeping the oil sales to Europe. Now, Europe isn't exactly fine with that. And there were plans to make an oil pipeline from the Middle East up to Turkey, and then from Turkey into Europe, to provide an alternative, a cheaper alternative to supplying Russia. I think it would be cheaper, but even if it's not, even if it was around the same price, it provides a better political alternative to buying oil from Russia. So we're following it so far. There's this oil pipeline planned. But either whether Russia asked him to or not, Bashar al-Assad, the leader of Syria, was against this oil pipeline that would have to go through Syria. So then overnight, Assad is a dictator, a horrible anti-humanistic dictator that's just oppressing his people. And we've seen this before with the likes of, what's his name? The guy in Iraq. What's his name? Can't remember his name. But for example, Gaddafi in Libya, no one really had any problems with him, and then overnight he's a dictator, and we have to fund and support rebel movements to depose him, and that ended great. All the times that this happens, it ends great. So whether that's planned or not, it can go up in the air. But so like. What's his name? Saddam Hussein. Like a Saddam Hussein and like Gaddafi and like anyone that we want to turn into a scapegoat. Bashar al-Assad becomes a brutal dictator overnight. And so we're supporting rebels there, of course. And even having special forces and money and training and support and airstrike support to these rebels, whereas Russia is, of course, supporting Assad. And it's all about this oil pipeline. That's the thing. So they're obviously, American special forces are ingrained there supporting anti-government rebels, not ISIS, but other rebels in Syria. So we go back and we think about all of this. We're supporting rebels. We're painting legitimate rulers, whether they're obviously not democratic. They probably have problems of their own, but they are, I would say, not as bad as they are painted as generally. I don't think Assad is as bad as he is painted as. But he's supported by the Russians, and him being in charge is against American interests, so he is now a boogeyman. So we think about that. That's how we're able to do all of those things in Syria, is by painting him as a bad guy, so that no one complains. We look back to the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. We either used or took advantage of 9/11 to have excuses to go over there. And eventually that well ran dry. And there was no one in those lands. There was no legitimate government at that point for us to point fingers at after we had taken over and been there for 7 years. So we leave, and whether this was intentional or not, overnight, Islamist rebels take control of the vacuum, and suddenly we have ISIS running unopposed. And whether it was planned or not, ISIS is a golden goose for Western powers to work in the Middle East for their own gain, because anyone can look at what ISIS does, beheading people, destroying religious artifacts of other religions, killing and oppressing those of other religions, enacting brutal religious laws, attacking legitimate governments, threatening Israel, all of those things. And no person can say, I don't support war on ISIS without looking like a maniac or a crazy person. And that's good, because it gives them this endless supply of fuel to keep working over there that isn't going to run out anytime soon, like it did on the war on terror. Because we had already, hey, we got Osama, hey, we got Saddam Hussein, hey, we got the terrorist cell that caused this, why are we still over there? But with ISIS, they keep running strong. And the thing is, they're getting funding from people, groups somewhere. There's things like that huge fleet of brand new Japanese Jeeps that they get in contact with, training, guns, all sorts of supplies that no one's quite sure exactly where they're getting them from. You know, a lot of ex-American military gear. Officially, it's because they took it from the Afghani and Iraq militia forces we set up, but that can't account for all of it. So we have this bad guy figure that's either created or propped up by the Western powers to give them this unlimited golden ticket to do whatever they want in that region. And right now, it's to get that pipeline through and to support groups they want to support. And the thing is when you look at other countries, any of them have people you could paint just as bad as they did Assad, just as bad as they did Saddam Hussein. Look at Saudi Arabia. We're allies with Saudi Arabia, so it's fine, but they've been run by a hereditary monarchy directly since Saudi Arabia was created. We could paint a kingdom as being pretty backwards and repressive to their citizens if we needed to, is the thing. I mean, we could do that with any country over there, have the media and the governments and everything to look into them, whether they're fabricating stuff or just looking at stuff with a magnifying glass focus. We can paint any Middle Eastern government as evil and oppressive if we wanted to, if it served the goals of the United States government or her allies. That's the thing, is no one cares until forces put a focus on it. You know, no one cares what our allies in the Middle East do to their civilian populaces, how repressive they might be, because we are allied with them. But we're not allied with Syria because they didn't want to let the pipeline through to cock-block the Russians. They didn't cock-block the Russians, so now Assad is using toxin sarin nerve gas on all his civilians and bombing everyone and, just being a big asshole that needs to be deposed. Deposed for what? What's going to happen after that? Oh, yeah, all of the other provisional governments the United States has set up have done really well over there in the years. Look at ISIS, Where did they come from? What do they control now? Mostly stuff we set up that didn't go so well, that wasn't able to fight them off. And that's the thing. It's all just political mind games being run on the back of suffering of people that don't deserve it. Whether or not I like Islam, I won't get into. It doesn't matter. They're still innocent people being knocked away from their homes, being killed, being oppressed, being forced into military service, having to fight for their lives, because countries like America and Russia and the UK and every country that works with the United States government, they're selling these people under the bus so they can have their shady little games hidden behind terrorist organizations and liberating the people that they don't need liberating. They just need to be left the fuck alone. That's the thing. That's what's causing all of this. And like, it's not, oh, you're oppressing them so they're becoming radicalized, that sort of dumb narrative. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying, either way, people who go to suicide bombing and all that they're not thinking things through correctly. But you have to look at it with a fairly skeptical of Western government's view of, if they would just not do all this stupid fighting there, these proxy wars there wouldn't be as many problems. And you have to wonder, they must know that, right? They're not, our elected governments can't be so idiotic that they don't see what they're doing. They're doing it intentionally and just not talking about it. Honestly, my idea is that 9/11 theorists, the theory that, the planes were caused by the government or it was an inside job, I think that is a false flag created to make anyone who's skeptical of anything that Americans or Europeans do in the Middle East, to make them look like crackpots. Like, oh, you're talking about the U.S. government causing this? What next? Loose change much? It's just this perpetrated to make anyone with anything vaguely close to that look like a nut job that believes that George Bush planted C4 in the World Trade Center, or that Jews caused it because they all weren't there that day. All that stupid stuff. Like, I'm not sure what to believe, but I'm pretty sure that one is sketchy enough and widely publicized enough that it's used as a smokescreen to prevent all the things that I'm saying now from being publicly accepted. It's sort of like with JFK theory, the real theory is all these fake theories like, oh, the Pope did it, the Cubans did it, oh, the federal government did it because they didn't like JFK. All of those are propped up and supported illicitly by the United States government to hide the truth, because the truth is just some mundane accident. But lo and behold, all those other ones are there, and that allows them to just smokescreen the truth and make anyone who questions it look like they believe that Ronald Oswald was a Sith bounty hunter sent by the Stalin man in his bat cave. But no, it's become widespread enough that now even the people who believe in JFK theories think that the real theory is fake. And that's the same sort of thing with what I'm talking about in 9/11 theorists. And that's the thing, is they use these sorts of things to cover up more important truth all the time. Like, look at the WMDs. There are WMDs there. Oh, no, there's not. That's used as a smokescreen to hide the fact that American servicemen in Afghanistan and Iraq in the mountains ran into giants, big, like 12-foot tall, red-haired, bearded giants that could take like a squad automatic weapon full of 5.56 rounds before going down. But that's obscured by all these other conspiracy theories that the government itself created as a false flag sort of shield to associate the facts with crackpot theories, so that anyone who thinks about anything close to that theory automatically is associated with this other made-up, totally ridiculous plan. Like, anyone who questions what we do in space is automatically saying, oh, Kubrick filmed the moon landing. It's all government creating conspiracy theories to obscure the truth, to poison the well, to use the right term. So thank you for watching the Freeways episode of Game and Chat, Freeways and Chat. Hopefully you've become enlightened a little bit to what's going on in the world. You can leave a comment or a like below. It does help me grow the channel to get likes, and I love comments. It gives me feedback and things to work with. I mean, you can even suggest topics for further episodes. I'd like to thank our sponsors, which is saltwater, bottled saltwater. It's not seawater, it's water that's been salted just enough to give it a nice tang of flavor while still being palatable and without dehydrating you too much. It's really tasty stuff. I'll take a swig right now. Ugh. It's naturally sourced, and it's delicious. You can pick it up at Kroger's and Best Buy, and what's the other one? Big Lots. That's it. So go to your local Big Lots, Best Buy, or Kroger's to pick up your bottle of salt water. That's salt with an E at the end. Water. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.